All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our construction safety workshop presented by the City of Los Angeles and Metro Contractor Development and Bonding Programs. We have a great presentation for you this afternoon presented by Mr. Anthony Malson, who's our Senior Safety Manager here at Meriwether and Williams. But before we get to the presentation, just have a couple of housekeeping notes to go through. Just the first one. So during this meeting, there'll be a lot of information shared, and we want you to ask your questions and submit those questions in the chat or raise your hand to ask verbally. What we are going to ask you to do, though, for this session is to write your questions down and save them to the end. There's a lot that's going to be covered, and some of your questions may be answered throughout the presentation. And since there's so much information, we want to just make sure we get it out, and then we can talk about it and ask questions at the end. So if you could be mindful of that. And then the second thing is to make sure, when you're on camera and speaking during the question portion, to just please be mindful of your surroundings. We'd like to have everyone just go on mute right now, since we're not doing any questions or talking at this moment. That way we all can hear and have, clear audio. With that being said, we also have a survey that we need you to fill out as a part of your attendance today. Just letting us know what you thought about today's workshop and the information that was shared and what you'd like to see in the future. That's how we develop our programming here, and provide, try to provide you with the best information that you want to receive. So that's all I have, and I'll make sure that this link gets into the chat as well. And so that is all of my notes. If you want to contact Meriwether and Williams and the Contractor Development and Bonding Program, here's our phone number, email, and website. If you are not a member of the program, we can definitely talk to you about that and get you more details about, what it is we do and how we can help you as a small business contractor grow your business. So that information is there, and you also receive that as well. So thank you for that. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to our speaker, Mr. Anthony Malson, who will lead us through today's presentation. All right, Anthony, you can go ahead and share.
Got it. I'm making sure I'm unmuted there. Hey, everybody. Okay. My name's Tony Malson. Got a presentation for you today going over safety and construction. I've been in safety over 15 years, been in construction over 30, and I currently work mainly out at San Francisco International Airport on all the capital improvement jobs out there. So until COVID-19, there was several $1 billion of work going on. That's changed quite a bit, but there's still a lot of very large construction out there. We work under risk management, helping them with loss and mitigation at SFO. So that's a little bit of my background, and I'm going to go ahead and get rolling because we got a lot of stuff to cover. Let me share my screen here. Going. All right. Everybody see that okay? Good?
Yeah, it looks good.
All right, excellent. Of course, it doesn't want to work for me. There we go. Hold on a second. There we go. So, sometimes during COVID-19, you'll be working on a job site and that job site will get shut down. You have to reopen it. You might be starting a job site from fresh, Some things you have to think about if you're reopening your job site or you're starting a job site during COVID-19 is you want to make sure that your COVID-19 site-specific plan has an addendum in there, your health and safety plan, completed before opening that has to do with COVID-19 specifically. You want to make sure all your workers are trained in that COVID-19 updated mandates, procedures. You want to make sure that you cover all the bases for everyone who might have some language barriers. There's a lot of different languages on job sites these days. You want to make sure everybody knows what's going on. Job site entrance screening. You are going to want to make sure that you screen each worker that comes onto your job site and also document this because it's going to be pivotal if you have a COVID-19 positive on your job site. You need to do contact tracing. COVID-19 job site best practices are just, if you go above and beyond what CDC wants, what the controlling contractor wants, what the state wants, Cal OSHA, make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, when it comes to COVID-19 on your job sites. And, it depends on the size of the site, depends on if you're a subcontractor or a controlling contractor, there's some things to consider, but, make sure that you have your bases covered so all of your employees are protected and taken care of. So keeping workers safe on your site, training. It's all about making sure that all your workers know what's going on in the field and they know the hazards that exist, especially when it comes to COVID-19. CDC versus Cal OSHA and OSHA. Now, Cal OSHA will have usually a little more stringent standards than regular Fed OSHA. CDC can sometimes have guidelines that are contradictory. A lot of their guidelines sometimes will have to do with the general public and won't have to do with contractors and construction sites specifically. So you want to make sure you know the difference on that. We'll have plenty of links at the end, to share with you guys. Social distancing in construction. I mean, you guys know we've been beating everybody over the head for the last year with COVID-19 protocols. Social distancing is important in construction, and sometimes that can't be avoided. Sometimes you have 2 or 3 workers that need to work in an area that's close to get the job done. Sometimes you have 2 guys in a lift that are very close to each other. You need to make sure that those guys have proper face coverings, or is there additional PPE that they might need? Maybe they could have a face screen, if they're really close to each other, maybe have a barrier in between each other. I've seen lots of stuff on the job sites to accommodate and accomplish that. And that's what we're talking about with additional PPE. Proper hygiene and, wash your hands all the time. Hand sanitizer is important on the job site, and bathrooms and wash stations. It's required by law that you have a well-stocked, clean bathroom, and the wash stations need to be taken up a notch during COVID-19. And if you normally had 1 wash station before, you might want to have 2 or 3 now, and it just depends on how big your company is, if you're a subcontractor or the controlling contractor on that. Share tools and equipment. So if you have guys in different shifts coming on and off, sharing tools and equipment, sharing lifts, sharing work areas, it's really important that stuff gets sanitized in between those shifts and sanitized in general, because I've seen it personally happen where guys are exposed on the job site from sharing tools with other trades or with the previous shift at SFO. So make sure that you have what is necessary and available for them to sanitize those tools and equipment. Break areas, be real careful with break areas. Social distancing is a must. No more shared water, no more microwaves. You can't have shared equipment out there where everyone's touching the same thing. And an example is most of the picnic tables that are at the break areas and Terminal 1 job at SFO, there's 2 people allowed to sit at those picnic tables, 1 at each corner, and they're just about exactly 6 feet apart. So that's a good example. A lot of guys will stagger work shifts. If you have that amount of employees that you can break it up a little bit, less guys working in that area instead of cramming them all in there in 1 day shift. That's an option too. Toolbox talks, we're going to go over that a little bit later, but an excellent way to get your information across every morning to your guys. Hold on here, this thing is going crazy a little bit, guys. So COVID-19 exposure and reporting. Let's see here. I want to make sure I'm on the right page here, fellas. Give me a second. This thing is like lagging really slow on me, guys, so sorry. There we go. COVID-19 exposure and reporting. So COVID-19 action plan, this is part of your addendum. What do you do on site? What do you do on site? How do you handle a COVID-19 positive on your site? Everybody by now, the symptoms of COVID-19, flu-like symptoms, cough, fever, and the like. Tracking employees' job site movements. If you have a positive on site, you need to know how to have contact tracing with those individuals, and that has a lot to do with that employee check-in. When you know when that person came to work, where they're at on that job site. It's if you have a very small team and a very small amount of employees, that becomes a lot easier. But if you're a subcontractor on a very large site, that can get a little trickier, and you have to involve your controlling contractor as well. Be sure to notify your subcontractors if you have them, and other employees on the site. And you also have to be aware if you had visitors on the site. Often we'll have owners visit the site. We'll have insurance people visit the site. Heck, even Cal OSHA, if they visit, you need to make sure you record them as well at your entry station and track them. So if you have to have a job site shutdown, if you have a COVID-19 positive, you can't continue work under Cal OSHA regulations. You have to temporarily shut down your site and make sure that you disinfect the site properly before reopening. And that's pretty important. I have seen it on larger job sites where if there's a subcontractor working in a specific area of the site, just that area is shut down and not the entire job site. And that works out. So health order timelines and requirements. Now, for me up here in Northern California, I'm pretty proficient with San Francisco County and San Mateo County, which is where SFO is. Now, the reason why I say navigating your county's most recent health orders is because there is a lot of different counties in California, and especially in the LA County, the LA area. There can be differences in regulations from county to county when it comes to construction. Up here in San Francisco and in San Francisco County, small construction is considered anything under 20,000 square feet in SF, and you're still required to have a site-specific COVID-19 supervisor, and that can be any employee that you have there. Now, large construction is over that 20,000 square feet, and you're required to have a COVID-19 safety compliance officer if you're a larger construction. And if you're large construction too, you're also required to have a job site safety accountability officer, and they are required to have a 30-hour construction. So I really doubt that a lot of you guys fall into that large construction area, but with your specific county, I'm not schooled in all the counties in California. I don't know exactly what all of those are, but I'm definitely down to help you look in the right direction if you need help on that. At SFO and in some LA County moments, it's the construction that you're doing is considered public works construction. And public works is just a little bit different, but you still need your COVID-19 safety compliance officer. And this link that I'm showing right here is Los Angeles County Department of Public Health guidance for construction sites. That's basic guidance, for Los Angeles County. And online, you'll be able to find your own county's health orders very easily. And if not, hit us up and we're happy to help. So COVID-19 health and safety plan updates. So you want to make sure that your overall health and safety plan has a COVID-19 addendum. And this addendum doesn't have to be 9 pages, 10 pages long. It can be fairly short, but it has to have your plan and your action plan in it. You want to include COVID-19 protocols also in your JHAs and in your pre-task plans, because it is a risk on the job sites. It will be until we get past it. And all of this stuff changes almost week to week, but definitely month to month. New health orders come out. Cal OSHA will put something else out new. CDC has put out so many new things in the last couple of months. I mean, the amount of health orders that we've had in San Francisco is staggering. And just this last month, they did 2 revisions in just 1 month. So you really have to stay on top of your county health orders. And of course, make your plan site specific. You want to have your COVID-19 plan available for all your workers in the relevant languages. Make sure your workers fully understand what your COVID-19 plan revisions are and what they mean to that job site. Let me do something real quick here, folks. I am going to, it won't let me exit here, unfortunately. Carlos, I wanted to share.
Okay, you might just have to stop it
Let me
and then go back to whatever you want to share.
Well, I just wanted to go over a Hensel Phelps addendum to give these guys an idea of what an addendum looks like. So let me stop share and then share again, and I'll go to that specific document.
Okay, yeah, that should work.
This is a little bit of a pain, but let me see here. This is what I wanted to do. So this is an example of an addendum that Hensel Phelps did for San Francisco International Airport. And I have tons of examples of these things, as well as all the other documents that we're going to go over today that I can send you guys, as well as, I know Carlos has some too. But if you look over this is just, it's only a few pages, but it talks about the purpose and scope, the recommended strategies for prevention, and what they do in this particular addendum is they reference CDC recommendations a lot. And you're encouraging sick employees to stay home. What are the symptoms? What are you doing if someone tests positive? What's your plan, which is all CDC guideline based? Travel and access to the sites, about sharing vehicles and things to that effect. Social distancing, they give their list of the breakdown of what their particular contracting company's approach is. Sanitizing and cleanliness, communications, and they talk about work stoppage, if that has to stop. What are they going over? What are they going through? A few additional information and resources, site-specific enhancements, and that's basically it, and I can share this with you guys after the fact, no problem. But this addendum, to your safety plan doesn't have to be, really, really complicated or in depth. You really just want to cover Cal OSHA's guidelines, CDC guidelines, if you have best practices, what your approach is to dealing with COVID-19. Go back to the presentation here. So the safety compliance officer and the site-specific COVID-19 supervisor. If you're small construction here in SF, you have to have a site-specific COVID-19 supervisor. And that can be any one of your employees you assign that to. If you're a larger construction, they call it a safety compliance officer. And really, it's exactly what it says it is. They're supervising and making sure that there's COVID-19 compliance. And that means that they're making sure that that you have the proper record keeping in line, making sure that your daily screenings are happening and that those records are being kept, for contract tracing purposes. Daily briefings, they're going and talking with the people in the field and making sure that everything's going down. If you have to close because of non-compliance, they're responsible for putting together a remediation plan. If you had to close because you have subcontractors that aren't complying or your own people that aren't complying and it's creating a hazard on your site, and you say, hey, I'm gonna shut the site down until we can get our ducks in a row here, you have to put a remediation plan together. What does that consist of? How are you going to train your employees? How are you going to mitigate that? And all of this needs to be shared with your own county's designated official. Now, usually that's someone through the health department. There's kind of a gray area there in California. I found, they just say in all of their things, designated county official, but there's not really anything listed. Usually it's just, there's an official at the health department that deals with construction and they have to be made aware of things. So let's move on to develop and implement emergency action plan. Now, California requires that you have an emergency action plan when you have any type of construction. So things to consider is, does the plan consider all potential natural or man-made emergencies that could disrupt the workplace? California, gotta have a lot of earthquakes. A lot of times we can be near the ocean, near the water. There can, be a tsunami. There's things to consider there. Does the plan consider all potential internal sources of emergencies that could disrupt the workplace? That's really important. Does the plan consider the impact of these internal and external emergencies on the workplace operations and in the response tailored to the workplace? Does the plan contain a list of key personnel with contact information and your local emergency responders, agencies, and contractors? So, usually on a job site, you're going to have one person for your company that is going to be responsible for dictating some of this. And if you have an emergency that happens, that person will also be the person responsible for sounding an alarm, or verbally letting, if you have a small company, if there's under 10 people, you can do that verbally. If there's over 10 people, you have to have some type of alarm system. Usually on construction sites, it's an air horn. Cal OSHA prefers an alarm, but they made an exception for air horns. So does the plan contain the names, titles, departments, and telephone numbers of individuals to contact for additional information or an explanation of duties and responsibilities? That kind of falls under the same thing that we were just talking about. Now, how are rescue operations going to be performed? There are some construction companies that they have guys that are trained that they are either ex-paramedics or they're highly trained individuals, and they can actually help in an emergency situation. Usually that's not the case. Usually you have people on site that might know first aid, and that's usually about it. But 911 is what you're going to have to decide. You either are using the emergency operations that are in your area, or you're doing that internally. Does the plan address how medical assistance will be provided? Same. Does the plan identify how or where the personal information of employees can be obtained in an emergency? So you need to make sure that if you have employees that have some medical issues or medical allergies or things like that, you need to have that information available to the folks in charge. So evacuation policy and procedures. Does the plan identify the conditions under which an evacuation would be even necessary? And does the plan identify a clear chain of command and designate a person authorized to order an evacuation or shutdown of operations? And that's super important because, in an emergency, there definitely needs to be one clear person that's on site that can sound that horn, sound that alarm, go tell the crew, hey, it's time to evacuate. Does the plan address the type of actions expected of different employees for the various types of potential emergencies? Does this plan designate who, if anyone, will stay and shut down critical operations during an evacuation? Now, this is an extremely rare situation in smaller construction that you probably wouldn't have to consider. But if there is a potential for that, it is a consideration if you're on a larger job site. Does the plan outline specific evacuation routes and exits, and are these posted in the workplace where they're easily accessible for all employees? This is one of the most important things. If you don't have your employees trained on those access routes And if you don't have proper signage up, it could be a real mess if there is an actual emergency evacuation. If you're a subcontractor, you want to make sure that that the controlling contractor has all of this in line as well. But in the end, you are responsible for this. So make sure that as the job site progresses too, these routes will change. At the beginning of the job site versus when you build and throughout the the process, these routes will change. And I've seen them change 5, 10 times on a job. And every time there's a change on these routes, you need to make sure that everyone is trained and everyone knows where to go. Does the plan address procedures for assisting people during evacuation, particularly those with disabilities and who don't speak English? Make sure that you know all of those things on your job site. If you have folks that don't speak English, I worked on a job with a guy who was hearing impaired. So the folks that worked around this gentleman, they had to be aware during emergencies to help him out as well. Does the plan identify one or more assembly areas or muster points? So you're going to have different assembly areas in different parts of the larger job site, and also depending on the emergency or the state of the construction site, those muster points might change. You need to make sure that your employees are aware. And wherever you gather, what is the method for accounting all those employees? How are you going to check off to make sure that everybody is there and evacuated and safe, and who entered your job site earlier that day? Does the plan address how visitors will be assisted in evacuation and accounted for? Rarely, but there could be a possibility that you have visitors to the job site and there's an emergency that requires an evacuation. With your COVID-19 check-in protocols, this does make this a little bit easier because you will have a list of every single person that comes onto your job site and where they're headed and why they're there. So, it would be rare that you have visitors that you need to account for, but you definitely need to think about it. So before we get into a JHA, let me see here. I'm going to stop sharing again. Sorry I have to do it this way, guys, but it's not letting me do it the other way. I'm going to have to share screen again. Where was the emergency? Site specific. I think maybe it was the other side of this. Let me try one thing here. Apologies. No, it's not up there. It's kind of the roundabout way to do it, but at least I can get something done here. Template. That's that word. PD show all windows. There we go. Emergency action plan. So this is from OSHA. It talks about emergency action plans. It goes over a little bit. I just wanted to, they have a pretty good basic example in here that I wanted to touch base on. They talk about the elements and where they go, the procedures, rescue and medical. So the alarm system, it's actually required to have a type of alarm system if you're over 10 people. But general contractors and subcontractors company who can't fulfill the alarm obligations in their action plans, an air horn is usually will suffice. So OSHA has said that out loud, so you can always have your air horn handy. And if you're under 10 people, your voice is good enough there, as long as they're not spread out on a job site too large. If you do have a site-specific moment where you're under 10 people and they're spread out all over the place, make sure you have an air horn handy for your plan. So training, very important. Here's their sample, and it's pretty good. So they talk about critical operations after the emergency evacuation plan, methods to account for, rescue and medical duties, means of reporting emergencies, company representatives that are responsible for the plan. This is a nice basic overview. Emergency evacuation, are you coming from the roof? Is it ground? Critical operations, you might have some stored energy that you need to deal with. Propane, combustible liquids, combustible engine equipment. These are all things to take into account. Employees, meeting location, That muster point is really important. It can change throughout the site. Rescue and medical duties. This is what we were referring to earlier, where we're talking about, are you taking care of this yourself, or are you have someone else that you're relying on? 911 is usually the way to go, trained professionals. Means of reporting emergencies. If there are 10 or fewer employees in the area, human voice will be used to notify those on the job. For projects involving more than 10 employees, air horns or similar equipment will be used. And your company reps, your emergency contacts, local hospital, telephone numbers, company representatives, all the people that you need to contact in an emergency. And I also like this: directions from job site to the nearest hospital in case you have, in case of not being, taking an emergency vehicle. That's a good thing to have handy. That's about it on that one, but it's a nice simple approach, and I just wanted to be able to share the doc with you real quick before we move on. So job hazard analysis, development and implementing, JHAs, why it matters. Well, the obvious reason of why it matters, it can save people's lives, it can save people's limbs, it can save their fingers, it can save their eye, their injuries. That's the human condition that we all worry about. But why else does it matter for you as a business? Well, if you mitigate hazards before, it can save you a ton of money in the long run. And it can save you money insurance, it can save you money in injuries. But who will be doing the tasks that you're worried about? Where will these hazards be presented? It's most important to involve your workers. That's literally the most important thing when you're putting together a JHA. And often it's smart to have the person that is actually performing that work to be right there doing it either with you or putting the JHA together themselves. OSHA and Cal OSHA regulations and assistance. Cal OSHA regs are, you shouldn't just strive to just say, hey, we're Cal OSHA compliant. Cal OSHA regs are down here. That is the least amount of work you can do to be safe on a job site. You always want to strive to be higher in your safety culture and your approach than Cal OSHA. Best practices are really key for an excellent safety culture. And one awesome thing that Cal OSHA offers, well, OSHA offers in general, is they offer assistance programs and they offer consultation services. Most contractors call and say, hey, why don't you guys come on out to my job site and hang out? Most people don't want Cal OSHA, and they're like, oh my God, if Cal OSHA is on the site, they're going to cite me, they're going to see all these things wrong. That's not really the case. If you reach out to Cal OSHA and you request service from them, and you say, hey, I don't really know exactly how to be safe in this particular situation, can you guys give me some consultation services? They love it, and they'll come out and they'll help you out, and it's a no cost to you. And the other benefit of this service that OSHA provides is you can familiarize yourself with the folks in your area at Cal OSHA. And so if something does happen on your site and these folks are out there, there's a familiarity there. They already know that you're safety minded. They already know you've reached out to them and you're trying harder than some others. And it can make a big difference, So I have a link at the end of this presentation that is for their assistance services. So in your JHA, you want to list, rank, and set your priorities for potential hazards. Where to start? So you want to break the jobs down into steps. You want to include enough information to describe each job or task, but you don't want to try to cram 10 sentences into that little box. It's not necessary. You don't want to be overly detailed. Review the steps with your workers to make sure that you didn't come in handy again. You want to make sure that you're creating these JHAs with those guys involved. Getting input from the workers to perform the job is the most valuable. Review with the workers and get their input. Can't emphasize that enough. Identifying the hazards of each step by asking yourself, what can go wrong with this particular job? What are the consequences if something does go wrong? How could it happen? What are some other contributing factors? What's happening around you? Weather, where the task is taking place? How likely is that? How likely is it that hazard would occur? So identify ways to eliminate or reduce those hazards. Are there safer ways to do the job? You want to be really specific here. You don't want to just be like, hey guys, be careful out in the field there. I don't want anything to happen. The changes in the workplace or in the work process are big, because if there are changes in anything that has to do with the process, whether that be a new tool that's involved, is there a new person that needs to be trained when they're coming on board? Did the process change in some other way because of what you're building? Changes in that process require changes in the JHA. PPE, gloves, steel-toed boots, head protection, hearing protection, all of that stuff is important when it comes to protecting. But PPE is always the last thing to choose outside the other controls. So I have another example of a JHA that I'm going to show you that's more elaborate, but this is straight from OSHA, their example of the 3 rows, So this is grinding iron castings. So if you look at the job step, so the worker will reach into a metal box to the right of the machine. He'll grab a 15-pound casting and carry it to the wheel. Well, what are the potential hazards? He could strike his hand on the metal edge of the box while he's pulling it out. He could cut his hand on one of the burrs that they haven't ground off yet. Drop the casting on his foot. Maybe he's reaching or twisting or lifting wrong and hurts his back, hurts his arm, hurts his shoulder. Control measures, wear safety gloves, use safety gloves, steel-toed boots, train the worker in proper lifting techniques, reconfigure workstations to minimize twisting. This is a very basic overview, but you get the idea. So the next steps in a JHA, you have your list of hazards out, your control measures, you're starting to consider your control measures. How do you reduce and eliminate those? Well, you accomplish this by involving your workers and using OSHA's hierarchy of controls. If you don't know what the hierarchy of controls are with hazards in OSHA, number 1 is elimination. This is always where you should start. If it's possible to physically eliminate the hazard entirely, that's the best way to go. Is grinding of iron castings even needed? That's the question. Substitution, is it possible to replace the hazard? For example, changing the equipment, changing the tools used to perform the hazardous task. Can safer grinding wheel or a safer iron cast be used? Engineering controls, is it possible to create physical barriers between your workers and the hazard? If your workers are not directly exposed to the hazard, the likelihood of injury is reduced for sure. So engineering controls, putting up barriers. Do workers have to be grinding? Can you install larger machine guards in the way? Administrative controls. It's possible to change. Is it possible to change the process or the way that you're performing a hazardous job? Is there a newer, safer grinding method that exists out there? And last but not least, of course, PPE. If none of the above are realistic or can be implemented, it is possible that PPE will protect your workers from the hazard. Yeah, workers are required to use cut-resistant gloves, easy grip safety gloves, steel-toed boots, and safety goggles. That would be pertaining to the casting moment. And please keep in mind, don't always go directly to PPE. PPE is always your last line of defense. If you can eliminate it, substitute it, engineer it out, or take care of it with administrative controls, that's always the best way to do it. So you've implemented some of your control measures. You want to train your workers in these control methods. The job steps on the job, the potential hazards, the measures to control them. As with any training, make sure the workers understand the training, consider language limitations and literacy levels. That's important on job sites. Use visuals if needed. if OSHA ever shows up to at your job site or your facility, one of the first things that they always do is they ask workers questions by themselves, take them off to their side, and they're going to ask them if they understand their job, tasks, and requirements. JHA comes in very handy in training in those moments. Finally, you should review your JHAs periodically. This can help you find any hazards that you may have missed. JHA should also be reviewed when there's a change in the task or process. We talked about that a minute ago. New equipment arrives, or if you have an injury or near miss that occurs with that process with those workers, you want to go and look over that JHA and make sure you covered all those bases. You might need to change your JHA due to that near miss or injury to prevent it from happening. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing again and go back and find a JHA example for you guys. This is a little more elaborate. Now, let me see if I can get that over just a little bit. So you have your basic information that you fill out. You have your 3 columns that we talked about before: the job step, the potential hazards, the controls of the hazard. Now, the way that this JHA is a little different is it has this risk assessment up here. And it's pretty basic. It looks a little complicated first off, but really it's talking about step 1. You review each hazard with that is identified. So the probability is the likelihood to cause an accident, near miss, an incident identified. Is it frequent, likely, occasional, seldom? So your probability is up here. So the first thing you're saying, okay, if you're lifting a toolbox out of the truck, what is the probability that there's going to be, something bad that happens? I'd say that's pretty seldom or unlikely. So you're over here in these boxes, right? And then you're talking about the severity of that. If something does happen, is it going to be catastrophic? Is it going to be critical? Is it going to be marginal or negligible? There's not a lot that can go down. This is really common sense based. This is about your take on it. I would say negligible to marginal. So you're in the green over here. You're in very low probability, right? So on this side over here where this box is, I don't know if these screens are covering up for you guys, but this has the RAC code. So if you looked at your hazard and you determined it had a low probability of occurrence, you would put that over here. And if you have something that is more of a high probability of occurrence, you have someone who is doing steel work and they're 40 feet off the ground and tied off to a horizontal lifeline, and you're talking about his task, that might be something that falls in a little these darker moments. So more critical if something would go down. Now, this risk assessment aside, a JHA is a pretty simple form, and you don't have to have this risk assessment in there. There's a ton of JHA forms out there that just have the basic information, and then they have the columns listed so you can talk about your job steps, your hazards, and your controls. This is something extra, and I like it. I recommend it. But if you want an example of one that doesn't have that, I could supply that as well. So after you listed, all of your jobs and your hazards and your controls, you want to talk about your equipment that you're using, your training requirements, inspection requirements, JHA acknowledgements. Whoever's involved in this task, you also want to be signing off on the JHA. It's not just going to be the subcontractor and the prime contractor superintendent. It's going to be the workers that are going to be involved, because if they're not aware of the JHA and the requirements there, then it's a moot point, right? All right, let's get back. All right. So your site-specific safety program development. Now, a site-specific safety program is exactly what it says. Each new job that you have, each new job site that you have, there will be different conditions than the job site before. This is not your overall health and safety plan. This is not your IPP, your injury and illness prevention program. This isn't a blanket program that has to do with your company's safety program in general. This is very site specific. So you have to think about the specific conditions and hazards on your site and what needs to be addressed. And it's the responsibility of each contractor working on any given project to implement and enforce and modify when necessary the safety policies and procedures identified herein. It's talking about your safety plan. Communication and training is an integral part of the health and safety program and should be emphasized over the duration of the job. You know, it's always a constant battle. You know, when you're out there, this isn't something that you go over with your guys once and you know, 6 months later, a year later, when the job's done, 3 months later, you know, everything is fine. If you're constantly training and getting them involved in your program, they'll be well versed in it. So in order to facilitate the above, every employee on site shall follow the established policies and procedures, report hazardous conditions, and take action to mitigate hazards before an illness, injury, near miss, or any other incident is experienced. Subcontractors as well are affected persons on the job site obligated to follow the rules and the conditions. They talk about OSHA regulations. We'd say Cal OSHA as well, the EPA, with COVID, the CDC, and if you did a federal job, you'd have to worry about that EM 385. That's a pretty rare moment. So your program development, you know, if the goal of the site-specific plan is to provide a health and safety working environment for everyone, as well as to protect the project site and the environment to the best of your ability. If a conflict is identified between the standards of the general contractor and the subcontractor, the most stringent requirement shall be applied. And that goes across the board for everything. If you have a controlling contractor that you are a subcontractor of, and they have best practices that far supersede Cal OSHA, you need to go with them. You know, you can't say, I've seen this before with some smaller contractors, they're like, hey, we're OSHA compliant. You know, if you are a subcontractor under a controlling contractor, their health and safety plan and site specific regulations, that's what you hold, and that's what you have to go by. And it can also be a really great example on how to step it up if you're new, you know. So this document is used as a guide for site specific health and safety and environmental requirements. Certain sections of this doc may not necessarily be for all projects. Conversely, you may have to add sections, added and amended if conditions change. All parties involved should review and modify and add to this document accordingly to meet requirements of the project, making sure to include all necessary information. So any site-specific safety plan is a working, living, moving document. It's not necessarily like your IPP or your health and safety plan that you can do once and it's sometimes good for a long period of time. A site-specific plan, it can change as the site changes. So make sure you amend it as your job site moves along accordingly, if it's necessary. So I'm going to exit one more time here. I'm going to find a site-specific plan to go over with you guys real quick. Got a basic one for you. There we go. All right. So let me see here. Procedure intent. It's to help identify and document environmental safety and health concerns, you know, the intended outputs. You know, the subcontractor will provide contractor with a written, this is more from a contractor looking at a sub, which is probably what you would more than likely be dealing with. A written site-specific safety plan using site-specific plan form. That's what I like about this. It's got a kind of a simple site-specific form that's attached to it. Contractor life-saving commitments. There's one thing in this whole plan that I think is missing that's pretty important on any job site that should be included is housekeeping. It does, even though it's not listed here, it does in area with hot work and fire protection, but that's also something that might want, that if you use this form, you would want to elaborate a little bit on. So you got the basics, you know, your name, your project, all of the personnel that are important, contractors, your site safety rep, and that representative doesn't have to be a safety manager, especially with smaller contractors. You know, the larger guys, they all have full-time safety managers. That's not always the case with the smaller construction. You can assign this to either, you know, someone that is your choice that works for you, or this could be you if you have a very small company. So you're talking about, you know, your scope of work, your emergency evacuation plan that we already talked about, and location. You know, that can be plugged right in here. And then it goes down the line for their life-saving commitments. You know, are you dealing with stored energy? Is it required? Yes or no? This is kind of, you know, a very simple approach to, you know, getting your plan in line. Not going to spend a ton of time here. You guys are getting the idea. I know that much. Fall protection, hugely important on any job site. You may work for, you may have a company or work for a company that's fall protection is almost never used, but really the basic rule of law is anything over 6 feet, you need to mitigate that. Cranes and rigging, confined spaces. You know, these plans, they're really important. Cal OSHA tends to change confined spaces every few years or so, and you know, you gotta stay on top of that. Confined space protocols are really important for your workers to be trained in and to know. Excavations are also a big one. You know, you have to know what's going on with excavations as far as, you know, the different soil types. You know, if you put someone in a hole, you have to know exactly how to mitigate risk for them, whether that be with shoring or sloping or however you work that out. Mobile equipment, what type of equipment are you guys using? Are you using forklifts or any types of lifts? Larger excavation. Caught in, struck by, your drug and alcohol company plan, that has to be included as well. Additional focus areas, talks about PPE, signs and signals and barricades. You know, this is important with COVID-19 too. Your COVID-19 signage is huge on the job sites these days. You have to have that. Work permits. They do talk about hot work a little bit down here, but I would definitely include hot work and fire prevention in your plan. And you know, if you are doing hot work, if you need to make sure you have a fire watch. You need to make sure that you have your fire extinguishers handy. All of that. So this is all good. This is all good. Chemical, biological material, highly unlikely, but you will have to provide MSDSs. If you do have chemicals that are harmful on site. There's hot work again. I would still put a different section in here that just had to do with fire prevention. Emergency preparedness, flammable gases and liquids, is it relevant? Do you have them on site? Waste management, how are you taking care of that? You know, it's talking about your stormwater pollution prevention program, erosion control plan in place. If you're the controlling contractor, a lot of this stuff is a big deal. And then subcontractor site-specific plan approvals. And that about sums that particular form up. So you can see it's pretty basic, but it is an excellent place to start. Let's move along. So your injury and illness prevention program, your IIPP. Now, the thing that makes this difference from your site-specific plan is it's a larger blanket injury and illness prevention program. This is for your company in general. Every day more than 12 workers die on the job, and that's a fact. Over 4,500 a year. Every year, more than 4.1 million workers suffer a serious job-related injury or illness. Yeah, I just want to throw those in there to have a little impact on why all of these safety plans are important. It seems redundant at times, it seems overwhelming at times, but really, these things are meant to help workers go home to their families every single day after work, and they have the right to do that. And if you own a company and you're their employer, it's your right to give them, it's their right to have you give them that. It's California law, actually. So considerations when developing your IPP: management, leadership, and commitment. Safety is always top down. A top-down safety culture, when you are the one implementing a high standard of safety on your job sites and for your company, your employees will buy in. They will believe it. I've seen companies where you have the people that are out there in the field leading the charge, trying to get by with as little as possible, trying to cut corners a little bit. Oh, I didn't know I had to do these things. And the workers that are under them, they take that example very literally, and you find them doing the same thing. So please, that leadership, that management, that top-down safety culture, that's really important. Assignment of responsibilities, again, that has to be listed as far as your company and who's responsible for what. Worker participation, I know I'm hammering that almost on every darn slide, but if your workers are involved in putting your safety plans together, they'll also be vested. They'll be bought in, and there'll be a little bit of pride there. Like, hey, I helped do this. This wasn't just something someone did in some trailer somewhere on a desk, and they brought it to me and said, be sure you know this. This is the injury and illness prevention program. Because, I've seen Cal OSHA come out to job sites and ask a worker, have you ever seen your company's IAPP? And I've seen workers say, what's an IAPP? I don't even know what that is. So you want to make sure that all your workers out there, participate and understand what's going on. Hazard identification and assessment, of course, hazard prevention and control. That's the whole idea. Education and training. If your workers aren't trained, these documents mean nothing. If your workers aren't educated, this is only something that lives in a desk somewhere or in a pickup truck. Injury and illness investigation. How are you investigating those industries, and who is in those potential injuries, or who is investigating? Is that going to be you, or do you have a safety manager? Do you have a safety engineer, someone who is responsible for safety on your site? Record keeping and documentation, program evaluation and improvement. You always want to, every once in a while, check out your IAPP and go over it. It's not like a JHA. It's not like a site-specific plan where you're really constantly going over it all the time. But your injury and illness prevention program should be, I would say, annually. I always recommend that contractors look at their IAPP annually, make any adjustments, make sure that there hasn't been any new regulations or Cal OSHA hasn't come out with anything that is going to affect that IAPP. So I'm gonna get out of this thing again, and we're going to go to an IPP and kind of go over a little bit. Site specific. This is my IPP. Here we go. Once again, this is a pretty basic IPP, but I think it's a good place to start. And I also have some links at the end of this for Cal OSHA help in developing IPP and examples of IPP. They have, I mean, it's endless the amount of information that is on the internet, but also it can send you down the rabbit hole a little bit. You can get a little bit overwhelmed with an injury and injury and illness prevention program. And you definitely, like, there's some pre-made plans out there for the type of work that you do. I've seen guys come in with smaller construction companies with an 88-page injury and illness prevention program that they downloaded off the internet, and they put their company on it and they handed it in. And there was like underground explosives in there, and there was like tons of stuff that had nothing to do with the work that they do. So it's worth the investment. Invest a little time. Do things yourself on that front for sure. And if you hear drums playing in the background, my son has an online drum lesson right now, so I apologize if you hear a little bit of noise. He's downstairs. Apologies, guys. So injury and illness prevention program, you got your company name, responsibility for your IAPP. This is important. Our workplace's injury and illness prevention program administrator is. Who is that person? Is that going to be you? If you're the owner of the company, if you're an employee of the company, this is a requirement by California. They want to know who's the, and you can assign that. It can be you. You just have to know that your responsibilities are very specific. So you want to prepare and update your workplace's IAPP. Obviously, you're implementing the provisions, making sure accidents and injuries, this is all super basic, but you get the idea. The workplaces are investigated, conducting regular workplace inspections and hazard identification, taking action to mitigate identified hazards. You're providing health and safety training to your employees, instituting a health and safety committee. Committees are usually in larger situations. If you have a couple of people in your company, that's not necessarily a committee, but you do want to have everyone trained. Establishing procedures for employee reporting of workplace hazards, accidents, injuries, illnesses, and general safety concerns. So it is important that your employees don't look at reporting any concerns for safety or incidents as something they could get in trouble for, as something that will potentially get them fired, as something that will be frowned upon. Safety reporting should be something that is encouraged, and people should get kudos when reporting something that is unsafe on the job site. If you create that environment, your culture will expand like gangbusters in a positive direction, because your workers are going to be feeling like they're empowered out in the field. If they see something, they're going to be like, hey, I know that someone will listen if I bring this up, and not just be like, oh, I'm going to slough that off, or I'm going to say I'll take care of it, and it doesn't get taken care of. And whoever is in charge of this, make sure your employees know who that is. And investigations, if you have a safety manager or someone who's in charge of safety, that's usually who is in charge of injury and illness investigations. But it does need to be listed in your IAPP. Procedures investigating accidents and exposures. So visiting the scene as soon as possible is super crucial. This should, interviewing injured employees and witnesses as soon as possible, if possible. Determining the causes of the accident, exposure, your root cause, taking corrective action to prevent the accident exposure from reoccurring. That's lessons learned. You need to make sure that that you go over accidents in an open format with your workers. Any injury or incident or accident that happens shouldn't be something that should be held from other people. It should be an open forum so you can learn and you can prevent it from happening again. Investigating near miss incidents is important too, because a near miss is still an incident. Recording the findings and actions taken, make sure your record keeping is in order. And if this is an OSHA recordable, your 300 log is filled out correctly, and it's reported to OSHA if it is recordable. Taking photos of the accident, the scene, employees involved, that's always an important aspect of it. hazard assessment, inspection, periodic inspections, identify and evaluate hazards in workplace performed by, and once again, this is usually your safety engineer, it's usually your safety manager, it's usually the person that you have designated as your safety person on site. Let's see here, inspections are always performed according to the following. Whenever new substances, processes, procedures, equipment are introduced into the workplace that present new hazards, whenever new previously identified hazards are recognized, occupational injuries and illness occur, workplace conditions warrant an inspection. Kind of gets back to what we were talking about, that housekeeping moment. Housekeeping is very important. When we hire or reassign permanent intermittent employees to process operations or tasks, hazards, evaluation has not yet been previously conducted. Your hazard correction. And you can also look up these titles with Cal OSHA and OSHA, and you can go over this stuff. But the links that I provide at the end too, you'll be able to go over this stuff as well. Unsafe or unhealthy work conditions, practices, or procedures will be corrected in a timely manner based on the severity of the hazards, including when a hazard observed as soon as it is discovered, when an imminent hazard exists, which cannot be immediately abated without endangering employees and or property, remove exposed employees from the area, except those necessary to correct the existing condition. Employees who are required to correct the hazardous condition will be provided with the necessary protection and training. Now that's you as the owner. You need to make sure that if someone is mitigating a hazard, that they are properly protected while doing so, and they're properly trained to do so. Identified plans and policies which are attached. So communications with employees about safety. All supervisors on your job site are responsible for communicating with their employees about occupational safety, health and safety hazards and protections in a manner that is easily understandable by all employees. You know, that get back to what we were talking about potential language barriers and the like. Communication system that includes all of the following. New employee orientation. Now, real quick to touch base on orientation. If you have never developed an orientation for your job sites, it's a really good idea to do that for all your job sites. And this can be an orientation that is done in the field when new employees come on the job. A lot of the larger job sites and the larger companies, the Turners, the Hensel Phelps, the Skanskas, their orientations can be upwards of an hour to an hour and a half long, and they're very site specific and very thorough. If you don't have that complex of a job site or a crew, also just a 15 to 30 minute orientation in the field or quickly in the job trailer before people go on site. You have a way of documenting that orientation. That is important. If you have the site-specific safety hazards outlined in an orientation and presented to your employees accordingly, and then you have recorded that, you don't get the employee in the field that said, what are you talking about? I didn't think I had to wear a face shield while I was grinding, or what do you mean I have to wear fall protection and a scissor lift, or oh, I have to wear safety glasses all the time? It can be a big deal, and orientation can really help with your safety program if you don't have one already implemented. A system for employees to anonymously inform management about workplace hazards without fear of reprisal. That's what we were just talking about, that safe place that allows workers to feel like that they can tell their supervisors about unsafe conditions without backlash. Posted or distributed safety information. A lot of times on job sites, there'll be a little safety wall. It's a good spot for all your COVID-19 signage at the entrance of the job site. You can have your OSHA posters there. You can have, all of your job site PPE requirement signage there, anything of the like. Regularly scheduled safety meetings. A lot of times with contractors, I will have a weekly get together with them as someone who's from risk management or safety. Sometimes, we'll do one big monthly one with the entire job site with all the contractors and the subcontractors. That's more of a committee meeting. But I recommend that you at least have a weekly get together. It'll make a difference. Other methods used to ensure communication with and involvement with employees are, if you have any others that you want to include there, our workplace elects to use labor management, health and safety committee. It talks again about a committee. If you want to include a committee, you can include a committee in your safety program. A lot of times, a safety committee won't just be an internal thing. It'll be with other subcontractors and contractors on a job site. Most controlling contractors will have a safety committee ran by their safety professional, and it's always good to be involved in that. Even if it's optional, be involved in it. Training and instruction. All employees, including supervisors, are provided training and instruction on general and job site specific safety and health practices. Training and instruction are provided according to the following schedule, and you would outline that schedule. You want to have when your IAP was first established, you want to know to all new employees, given new job assignments, which training has not previously been provided. Whenever new substances, processes, procedures, again, or equipment are introduced into the workplace or the job site, whenever anyone is made aware, new or previously unrecognized hazard, we're going over the same things again here. It's all important and it's all encompassing. Supervisors to familiarize themselves with the safety and health hazards to which the employees under their immediate direction and control may be exposed. To all employees about the hazards specific to each employee job assignment. And of course, that's when your JHAs come in, your pre-task planning and that type of stuff. Trainings provided, employee compliance with safety procedures. Management is responsible for ensuring that all safety and health policies and procedures are clearly communicated and understood by all employees. Supervisors and lead personnel are expected to enforce the rules fairly and uniformly. And also to partner. It's not just about being a safety cop out there. You want to know your subcontractors. If you have any, you want to partner with them. You don't just always want to be someone that's going out there looking for something wrong. You want to help them have a better safety culture. You want to nurture them along the way, and this can also just be straight to your employees too. It's the same approach. All employees, including supervisors, are responsible for complying with the safe and healthful work practices. Our system of ensuring that all employees comply with these practices includes one of the following. Informing all employees and supervisors of the IAPP, please make this available to your employees. They have to read this, they have to understand it, and they have to know what it consists of as it applies to your company. Recognizing all employees who perform safe and helpful work practices. And employee recognition is huge. You can have all kinds of recognition programs in your company. The possibilities are endless, but recognizing your employees and reinforcing positive and safe methods of work is a big deal. Fair and consistent discipline of employees who fail to comply with safe health work practices. Of course, you want that to be fair and across the board. Evaluating the safety performance of all employees. Providing training to employees whose safety performance is deficient. Other systems we have in place to ensure compliance with the safety practices. If you have more best practices, if you see other best practices with other contractors, with other controlling contractors or larger contractors, adopt them. Safety is not proprietary. It's across the board with everyone. Steal as much good safety practices as you can. The responsibility of all employees include the following checklist: reporting unsafe conditions, work practices, accidents to their supervisors and safety coordinators immediately, following safe work practices, using appropriate PPE as instructed by the supervisors. So, with the PPE moment, if you got guys wearing fall protection out there, make sure that they're trained on how to use that fall protection. If you got guys wearing very specific PPE for a job, make sure they're trained. It's very, very important. So record keeping and documentation. The workplace has more than 10 employees, maintains the following records, help us effectively implement our IAPP. So records of scheduled and periodic inspections. You always want to, anytime you make any type of field visit for an audit, make a record of it, make a report of it. Anytime there's an incident or injury, you have to have an incident report. You have to have an investigation report. You're going to make your life so much easier if OSHA comes onto your job site and says, let me see this, 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 and this, which are the things that we're going over today. If you have all of that stuff readily available, and it shouldn't be somewhere far away off the job site either. This should be on the job site, in the truck, or somewhere close by to where you can have access to it. Including names of personnel conducting inspections, the unsafe conditions, and also how those conditions were mediated. What were your corrective actions? Documentation of the health and safety training for each worker is really important. So whatever training you provide for your employees, that has to be documented too. And that behooves you 1,000%, because if you are spending the time and energy and money to have your employees trained in any specific environment, make sure you document all of that. It's a good thing to have handy if there is an issue with something. If you have someone who's a certified rigger and there's an issue with a crane situation, you want to make sure that you're like, yes, my rigger was certified, and all of that stuff makes a big difference. Documentation of safety and health training. Our workplace has fewer than 10 workers, including managers and supervisors, and we maintain inspection records until the hazard is corrected, and only maintain log of instructions to workers with respect to their job assignments when they are first hired or assigned to new duties. So local government entity, it's not going to apply. Master copy of this IAPP can be found at, other copies can be found at. You want to have these copies in places that that everyone on the job site can get to. I always recommend having a copy of all of your safety documents, either in your job truck, or if you have a job trailer, in the job trailer, or if you have a spot, right at your entrance of the job site, say, and you have, your board with your signage, your COVID-19 signage. A lot of times there'll just be slots up there, and it'll be like, there's my JHAs, there's my pre-test plans for the day. On the far right, I have all my, my IAPP and any other health and safety documents. It's good to have them. It's good to have them really handy, and OSHA absolutely loves that when they come on site and they can just be like, oh, this is great. Let's see what you guys are up to today. And I think that's the end of that bad boy. I wanted to go over that one a little bit more in depth, just because an IAPP is probably the bigger document of any of the docs that we're talking about today. So pre-task planning and development and implementing. So pre-task plan is not a JHA. It's not a job hazard analysis, but it is kind of similar. A pre-task plan is about all of the things that are going to happen beforehand, just as it states. So there, you'll see a lot of similarities with a pre-task plan that you will with a job hazard analysis, but the JHA is really more of like you're getting into the nuts and bolts of the job, the task at hand, and you're mitigating those hazards. And the pre-task plan could have everything to do from, I'm loading up the truck over at the warehouse, and I have to do this, and I have to, me and the workers are doing this, this, and this. Pre-task plan can be a little bit more in depth on that front, but they are a little similar. But you want to define your scope of work. You want to define what tools and equipment you're going to need, and those tools and equipment, where are you going to find them? Are they gas powered? What are the hazards? What are the equipment that you need to get on the job site? Is it being delivered? Are you picking it up? All of these things are part of pre-task planning before you get the job rolling. Analyze the hazards, as always. Develop and implement your hazard controls. That also has to do with your JHA. Perform work safely within hazard control. So let me look at a pre-task plan. Actually, I think I have a few copies of different pre-task plans here. Site-specific, where are you? There we go. So pre-task planning. You're listing this, the tasks to be performed. This is all the basics that are very similar to a JHA. Another thing that a lot of contractors do that they attach with their pre-task plan, before I even get into this, is a ground penetration permit. And it's a pre-task planning motion if you have any excavation or any type of digging going on. And, you know, that has to do with if you're digging, or, you know, were the utilities located properly, locating utilities before you dig. That's not just calling USA. You know, a lot of times you have to scan for those yourself and use some ground penetrating radar, or, you know, it isn't just always USA, because if you're working off you know, older documents, it can say where something is, but it can have changed drastically throughout the years. So think about that with pre-task planning as far as dig permits, potentially something to add to your safety program. But preliminary checklist, this is a pretty good one. So if any question with a yes, answer must be mitigated by the appropriate action or permits in the task plan. So you can run down all of these. I'm not going to sit here and read each one, but you get the idea. All existing utilities need to be identified in the pre-task plan. So that was just what we were just talking about. If you have gas lines or chemical, electrical, you know, that's a big deal before digging. That one, there's a worksheet here. So this is really similar to your JHA, the pre-task plan. It goes over the steps in the pre-task plan, you know, your hazards, how are you eliminating the controls for those hazards, and so on. Daily pre-task planning, here's another different style of a worksheet. Still kind of goes over the similar information, how you're looking at your project, your task preparation, consideration. What are you using and bringing, you know, on the PPE front, you know, what do you have to consider? Are you doing hot work? Are you doing confined space? You know, doing high voltage work? Or, you know, is there asbestos involved? You know, things to that nature. I like that one. There is another one here, which it does another, like a little box that says, you know, what's a risk code? And it gives you your columns, but it also is asking about the risk code. So if you have something that's low, medium, high, or extreme risk, those always go at the top. You want to go highest risk on your pre-task planning and your JHA, highest risk to lowest risk as you lay them out. And that's about it on that. About that. Just going backwards on me. Come on. So I want to talk about daily tailgate toolbox topics, how to document and conduct meetings in the field. Toolbox talks, a mainstay of occupational construction job safety at the level where it counts, where the worker is on the job. So they refer to quick and easy meetings around the toolbox, quote unquote, as it were, designed to systematically educate workers and topics that will help keep them safe and also allow workers to bring to the attention of their superiors situations that they're facing that are not safe, and also bring to attention to other workers in the field. Time frames. You don't when you're meeting someone at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in the morning, you don't want to crush them with 45 minutes of a tailgate or a toolbox talk. You really want to keep these short, 5 to 15 minutes in length. It'll keep them attentive. It'll get them working right away, and it's better overall for what they're going to retain, because you'll lose them after a while if you're out there jabbering for 40 minutes. You want to talk about, different topics, recent incidents or issues. You want to go over best practices learned about those, company policies and procedure changes, industry best practices or best practices you picked up from other contractors, new equipment or tools that are being introduced to the job site. Make sure the guys know what's going on, make sure they're trained correctly. Weather conditions may cause hazards, complacency in the field. As jobs go by, complacency can be a big problem, and it can cause injuries. Be sure to have all employees who are present sign your toolbox talk sign-in sheet. And it just create a regular basic sign-in sheet that you have every morning, or have it on an iPad if you want, and make sure that you log who's there, who showed up, because that's also really great for you as a tool to know who's present, who understands what's going on, who cares about that safety. And if someone gets hurt, you have their name, like, hey, we went over this, let's reiterate this fact. For if you do need disciplinary purposes with your employees, to have them documented when you have training, when you have orientations, when you have toolbox talks, when you have tailgate meetings. All of this is important that you document all that stuff. So I believe I have a link at the end of this too that goes to a site that has a bunch of topics and tailgates, and it tells the length and what it entails and all that. So that's part of. Let's see here. Get back. I think we're getting tailgates. So relevant links and examples. There's a couple of pages here, and this presentation will be provided to you guys too. So emergency action plan link, developing a JHA, a job hazard analysis link with OSHA. That's a really good one. I like that one a lot. Site-specific safety plan example. A link for that. Heat illness plan. It's required in California that you have a heat illness plan for your workers. Make sure you have water, shade. Water has to be a temperature. You want to make sure that this is something that you want to make sure you go over. And for your area, sometimes like up in the Bay Area, it doesn't get that hot. A lot of the times, this isn't necessarily something that is on the forefront of our plates, but in Los Angeles, it gets hot, real hot. So you guys want to make sure you have a heat illness plan in place. Some more IAP, stuff from DOSH that is really good. Guide to developing your IAPP. That's really good too. I like that one. It can give you a rundown, more in-depth on your injury and illness prevention program. The Cal OSHA poster that you should have on your job sites. Cal OSHA Consulting. So that link is really good. You can also just call up your local Cal OSHA and just say, hey, I'm interested in getting some consulting. You can talk to him on the phone. During COVID, it's kind of hard to catch him on the phone. It's not as easy as it used to be, so the link might be a little bit more helpful. This next link is Toolbox Talks PDFs. So it's pretty great. There's just like a ton of free downloads of Toolbox Talks throughout in the field, and a lot of them are super relevant across the board. There's a link here for the department, LA County Department of Public Health Guidance and Construction, and guidelines and samples of emergency evacuation plans from OSHA. So I think that's it. Thank you, guys. I know it is like a ridiculous amount of things to go over without having questions along the way, but open to questions now. And also, here is my email. please feel free to hit me up if you have more in-depth questions, or if you need a little help in any of the arenas that we talked about. Email me and I'm happy to help. And I'm happy to give you examples from other contractors of everything from COVID addendums to health and safety plans to, IAPPs, you name it. And these are only to be used as examples, but we work with a lot of larger contractors, and they're really great about sharing their safety with other contractors to help them get a better safety culture. So feel free to hit me up, and Carlos, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we can open it to questions if you guys have any. Like Tony said, I know it's a lot, but feel free to just raise your hand, unmute yourself, and we can get to some questions.
And I'm open via email too. If you want to email me later, if it's a more comfortable moment, that's all good too. No problem.
Yeah, if you do email, please just reference, that you attended the construction safety workshop, so he just doesn't get a bunch of blind emails and not really know what's going on. So I will add that in there.
Get 100 or more a day as it is.
Right. So does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I have a quick question. Ernie Moreno with Marn Construction.
Hey, Ernie.
How you doing? You said if someone tests positive for coronavirus, the job site has to be shut down. Is it just until they get sanitized and clean, and then
Correct.
The following day the workers can return to work and continue working?
Correct.
Okay.
If your sanitization protocols are right on, and you just can shut down that moment, get everything sanitized, and everyone can get back to work. There's a lot of ways to sanitize a job site these days. At SFO, a lot of these contractors, their pockets are deep. So I'll say that, but they have the machines that are I can't remember the name of it, but it has a chemical in it, and it's a hot steam that they just go over every surface, and it really blankets all the surface, and they can get through a job site very quickly. But there's still a lot of contractors that are just doing it by hand. Just get out there, and they have a team that they call, and these two people will come, and there's a lot of companies out there that are doing this right now for construction, where they'll send 3 guys over to your job site and have it cleaned very quickly and sanitize every surface area and every nook and cranny.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, do we have any more questions? So just feel free to ask.
Yes, the electrostatic, the foggers and the electrostatic. Thank you, whoever just did that. Electrostatic sanitizing, it's amazing. And they have smaller units to larger units too. They have industrial size stuff, but they also have handheld stuff. And I haven't priced it out personally, but I don't think it's going to be super cheap.
Yeah, some
no
some of
problem.
those machines are about $2,000. So
Yeah, they get really expensive.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, when you're a smaller contractor and you're on a serious budget, it's not always in the plan. Yeah.
Correct.
A spray bottle is a little bit cheaper.
Definitely.
And does the job.
Okay. Well, yeah, if there are no more questions, we can conclude today's workshop. I want to thank Anthony for being here with us this afternoon and just sharing his knowledge. His email is in the chat. We will send out an email tomorrow morning with the presentation and some of the documents that you saw today. As he mentioned, they're only as a reference point. They're not to be, converted and, slap your logo on there and, that type of thing. So keep that in mind as well.
And feel free to hit up Carlos for my email as well if you need it.
Yep. So thank you everyone for your time this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you all at our next workshop. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks everybody. Stay safe out there.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Carlos.